I'm so pumped to have you back. Because do you remember when you came?
No, I thought it was, you were pregnant. So
Okay. So over a year ago.
Over a year. It was like
Probably a year and
a
a
year
half.
and a half. I wanted to say 2, but I feel like that's too
And you
long.
were working on your book.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the book is here.
The book is here. She's
Congratulations.
Been born. Thank you.
Before we dive into everything in terms of our feelings and emotions around finances and money, I would love to give a quick description of what you do. Obviously, I'll do a separate intro explaining you, but like really what your work is for people listening, because I don't think many people know that this role even exists.
No.
So what is a financial therapist?
Yeah, so I am clinically trained as a therapist. So I have my license, which is a licensed mental health counselor, and had been doing this work for a long time. At this point, it's almost 15 years, I think. And so I have my clients come sit on the couch and we chat just like any other day-to-day therapist. But I realized that people need to talk about their money more frequently. And this was born out of my own story of realizing how I would get insecure. So a financial therapist really is somebody who is designed to sit and be with you in your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors about money, as well as dissecting your relationship with money.
What got you into this specific financial therapist realm of therapy?
So I went on my own financial journey, and that's when I had first moved to New York. I was, mid-20s, just trying to figure it out. And trying to figure it out meant I was spending all of my money. I was having a great time spending all of it, living life. I still had my car. I was going to see my now husband in Boston monthly. I was living. I was living. And I didn't understand why I couldn't always afford to go on the trips without taking on more credit card debt or not getting out of credit card debt. And I just didn't know. And I felt really bad about it. And that's when I was like, oh, let me just learn about personal finance. So I did that. And then I was like, oh, I love this. Maybe I should be a CFP. Do I want to leave mental health? But that didn't really feel right. And then it was right before COVID. I was pregnant and was kind of just looking around online and trying to figure out how to marry the two and if other people were doing that. And that's when I found Financial Therapy Association and the Center for Financial Social Work and Trauma of Money.
So it is a whole sector that you can be trained in. And what are you mostly seeing clients for?
Yeah.
If you had to generalize what people are coming to you for.
Yeah. So I would say some people it's overspending. Some people it's, hey, I'm scared to do things with my money. I'm scared to look at my money. I'm scared to move my money. I have tens of thousands of dollars in my bank account, just quite literally sitting in a checking account. I'm like, please get that out of there. So what that means to move it and why that might feel scary for some people. And then I have some people who either exited companies or are making a ton of money and are just this is different than how I grew up. I want to make sure that I'm navigating my emotions as well. And I have a lot of business owners too, a lot of people who are self-employed who are as an entrepreneur, we are all going through it in many different ways. And you really learn a lot about yourself, but you also learn about your relationship with money often.
Yes, I can speak from experience, especially the idea of spending for your business.
Yes.
And the guilt you feel of reinvesting and associating, or not associating, but figuring out and prioritizing what money is well spent and what's worth it and what money will you potentially make back.
Right.
It's that whole thing. But it's so true that so many of us, I can speak for myself and also many of friends I speak to, that are just don't want to get in the weeds of it because it feels daunting.
Yeah.
Every aspect of that, whether you're in debt, whether you have money and you're looking to invest it, it's just logistically it's scary and it feels like a lot. And I know for me, when I get overwhelmed by something or I feel dumb, I just retreat.
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm out.
Yep. You're I'm good.
I don't
want
to do that. I don't want to feel stupid. So what advice do you give, or tangible pieces of work do your clients do to work through these feelings?
Yeah, so I would say one, you don't need to know everything right now. I think there's this idea that if you're going to be, an agent of change with your money, on top of your money, right? I'm a badass bee and my money, I'm on top of it.
Yeah.
The idea is that you go from 0 to 100. There's no steps in that. You just know that you feel comfortable, looking at your stocks every day. That is kind of the vision of being good with your money, that you are so in the weeds. And that's just not true for most people. And you don't need to be in the weeds. Like, I'm very much so a retirement, like, set it and forget it. Like, automate it, let it pull from it, whatever account you want to pull from, and who cares? Live your life. But I think there's this vision of, I need to know everything about money. I need to know everything that anybody's doing, the investment bankers are doing, this person's doing. And that's just not the reality for most of us, that you don't need to know all of that. But it is scary, and people don't want to look dumb, and people don't want to be vulnerable, because looking quote unquote dumb is also can be seen as vulnerability.
Yes.
And so it's a lot easier to just be like, it's fine. I can either hire someone to do it, which is also totally fine, or I'm not going to look at it and ignore it.
Why do we feel shame around money?
Yeah.
Whether it's not having enough, or what I don't think is really spoken about a lot, but I notice even having a lot.
Yeah.
Like, even we said this before we started recording, but the shame people feel of admitting that they're rich.
Yeah.
Or the shame people feel saying that they have credit card debt, or any of those things. Like, why is there so much shame around money?
Yeah, so I think it's very complex, and it's very layered. So I will say that I think in the past, when people were kind of like, you wanted to be humble, right? You didn't want to be too verbose about having. You didn't want to make other people feel bad. I do think that that is part of it, right? That's mixed into the foundation. But what has happened is that while we kind of want to be like, oh, I'm humble, but now, especially with social media, and we can just see into anybody's life, right? Before we couldn't. It was kind of like, ooh, what are they doing down the street, right? There's a chapter in my book called Keeping Up with the Joneses. You didn't know what the Joneses were doing. You didn't know what their vacations looked like. You didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. Now we know. We see it. You can tell the difference. But we don't want to admit that there is an actual difference. And I think that's where the shame comes from. It comes from, oh, well, I'm not different than anybody else, but you are different. Like, you do live a different life. And I also think that people get upset and are like, I want to live that life. And I admit all the time, I'm like, no, sometimes I'm just jealous. Like, I want that too. I do. And I think that jealousy makes people angry because they feel like they'll never get there, or this person had handouts, or this person is a bad person because they have credit card debt, when it has nothing to do with, like, these aren't moral failings as a human. It's just like, hey, listen, I was born into this family, or I worked really hard for this company and was able to exit, or something happened. And I think a lot of times we like to conflate who people are because of their financial situations, when the two are not related.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I come at it from a side of, I don't know if it's shame, but it's kind of what you said. I think it's all tied into not wanting to feel different,
right,
and wanting to connect with people, and not wanting to be seen as different, no matter what side of the coin you're on.
Right.
And it's that feeling of wanting to be perceived or viewed or feel quote unquote normal. I don't know what normal is, because I guess it also varies on, like, your surroundings.
Totally.
If you're with a ton of people who are in the similar situation, it's like, yeah, okay, now I feel normal on either side. How do these emotions where do these emotions begin? At what age are we really taking in the concept of money and the conversation around money? And as a follow-up, when do we start having these conversations with our kids? A lot of my listeners are parents. Like, when do we start that discussion?
Yeah. So what I will say is that, when we don't talk, as adults, we don't talk about money enough. And we definitely do not talk to our kids about money enough, which then breeds all the things that we're talking about. So kids feel the energy. You know, they know what's going on. They know when somebody's arguing about something. They may not understand the nuances, but if money is a source of stress for anybody in the household, the kids pick up on that. So there is some research that has led people to believe that kids are solidifying their money views around like 7 to 9.
Wow.
Some people have debunked said research, but
saying that it's older.
Saying it's older, and just that it's hard to narrow down like an exact age.
Right, because so much can change also.
So much can change. But really what we're talking about is, when do kids start picking up on, oh, you're talking about money. Money is a thing. And I think it's age 3 when kids can start like identifying, like, hey, this coin has a meaning, right? Like, this is like a quarter or 10 cents. And, they obviously need to know how to count and understand that, but they are understanding that there's like a physical piece that has some kind of representation for something. So starting to have those conversations and explain to them what's going on is going to serve them better in the future because they have the foundation for what money is. Now, this is not to say you need to start talking about retirement or, stocks or anything like that. Like, it needs to be age appropriate, but the sooner the better. Like, think about it the same way we're like, hey, why don't you cross the street? Why is it important to look both ways? Oh, why is it important to pay attention to your money or look at your money? Because these are life skills that they are going to need to be able to navigate no matter what's going on with them financially. And I think for me, like, thinking about, as a millennial, is like, you get to college, everybody's getting credit cards, like, what's going on? They're throwing all the things at you. And I knew I shouldn't have gotten one, and I just didn't really know why, but I knew it was like a no kind of thing, or predatory. And I did get one, and I'll never forget, I bought an iPod, like $200. I'm like, I'm going to buy this iPod. I'm going to buy it. It felt really important. Paid it off. It was fine. But I was like, oh, well, now I have that credit card. I still quite literally have that same credit card today. But I say all this to mention is that we have to give a foundation to our younger kids to understand what's going on with money. So, kids go to the store, they want the things. Can I have a lollipop? Can I have a toy? Can I have all these things? And you're explaining to them why you are getting it or why you're not getting it. And that will just begin the foundation of how you talk about money, so that when they're in their early 20s, they're like, okay, I'm getting my first job, like my big girl job. Like, what does this look like? How do I want to save? What do I do with my money? You've already been laying the foundation for what happens. And I will plug this too, because I have this one client right in mind. Especially when you know that your kids are going to have to navigate any kind of money. So a job, a windfall.
What's a windfall?
So like if somebody was like, hey, I was in a cute little startup, and then I was employee number 7, and they sold the company, and now all of my stocks are, I can cash them out. Like, that could be a lot of money when people are like, I've never just had 6 figures dumped in an account. Like, what do I do? So thinking about that way, or an inheritance. Some people will get large inheritances and they're like, well, what do I do? I don't want it. And they feel so uncomfortable and shameful. But money's important. You can do a lot of amazing things with money. So the earlier we have these conversations, it sets our kids up as they grow to understand, like, why it's important to understand what to do with it.
It's so interesting having this conversation, because then I reflect back on my childhood and what I saw with money, and what I don't really think it was like a conversation in a negative or a positive way. But I do remember hitting a point of adulthood being like, wow, what I was raised with was not normal. And this is confusing to navigate, that I don't have the same standards of what I was raised with, and like may not ever. And like coming to terms with that. And I think on that same note, I'd love your opinion on this when it comes to like retirements or inheritance and savings. There's such this mixed bag of let's save later. But then it's like, are we just continuously pushing money to never be used?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. And I do not subscribe.
Okay.
I want to make sure everybody, myself included, has the necessary like financial vehicles that they need. So I do want to make sure that you are putting into your retirement, or that money is going to be there when you're no longer working. That it's extremely important. I'm always doing things for future Asia, always. Like, I love that bitch. Like, I'm always thinking about her. And after you've done that, right? After you've met your other financial goals, I want people to enjoy their money. I think a lot of times people assume like, oh, your money emotions, I don't want people to spend their money. I'm like, no. I want to make sure that you're not spending your money because you feel like crap about yourself. I want to make sure you're not spending your money because you are trying to keep up with people that you don't even like. I want to make sure that you're spending your money because you're like, oh, I met all my goals. I'm going to go celebrate. Or I love spending time with my friends, so I'm going to go to this dinner with them. Or I haven't taken a vacation, so I'm going to take the vacation and treat myself. I want people to be intentional about how they're spending, not just mindless. So nothing makes me more sad than somebody who has worked decades and saved all of the money for their retirement and their kids, and now will not spend it because they don't know how to. And we don't talk about that enough, that the same way we need to learn how to save and, certain things for a retirement or whatnot, or pay off debt, whatever it is, we also need to learn how to spend our money and enjoy it. Like there is a beautiful part of being able to do things that you love.
Yeah.
And we need money to do that. So
totally,
learning to spend your money is just as important. We don't need to, once the rainy day is saved for, okay, like let's go enjoy the sunshine. Like, what are we doing?
I love that. Why do you think it's so easy for so many of us in terms of like spending and enjoying our money? I know I'll speak for myself personally. It's so easy for me to do like the little purchases, the like sub X amount, like the Amazon orders.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And those things add the heck up. But then the large expenses, even when necessary or something that I really want, it gives me like agita, like that full body heat itchiness, like I want to crawl out of my skin.
Yep.
Even if I will spend that same amount broken up into small little things. Why is that?
It just feels it's easier, right?
Yeah.
If you're more comfortable with, we'll call it like $50, right? And that number could be anybody's number.
Right.
It doesn't matter. But it's so much easier to see $50 leave your account because it doesn't feel like a big deal. Oh, it's fine. That the money's there. It's okay. It's very easy to just like swipe away, or Apple Pay, Amazon, whatever it is.
Apple Pay.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
so it's too
ding.
easy. It's too easy. To just like swipe it away, and then you don't even see it because you're not also connected to the number, right? You're not seeing what's leaving your bank account. However, if we're talking $1,500, $3,000, insert number here, that feels a lot bigger. And everybody's number can be different to them individually, but that feels like, oh, well, this is a big deal. This is a bigger purchase. Is this okay? Am I allowed? Do I deserve this? And all of our, money stuff starts to come to the surface very, very quickly. That stops us from saying, oh, I can't just make purchases like this. And some people can, right? Some people, the $10,000 purchase isn't a big deal, and other people it should be a bigger deal than it actually is. So it really is just based on how you personally feel about your money, and getting comfortable with that.
It's interesting what you said, the can I do this, because that's so real. I think we all wish that there was someone that could be like, you are not allowed to do that, and you are allowed to do that. I don't know why, but I think
permission.
many of us want someone else to make the decision and the permission of like, this is allowed, this is not. I want to just circle back to one thing about the kids, because I forget where I saw this, but I attempted, we haven't done it in a long time, but to implement this, where it's like when a kid gets money for something, for instance, I know on their birthdays, their great-grandmother will send them a check, or that's kind of only the time I'm thinking about that they really are getting cash, but they have a piggy bank, and they put $1 or whatever it is in there every once in a while. And I remember saying this to my son, and I do want to implement it more, of being like, okay, now we have this money, and 1 week or something, if I could make this more regularly, we can take it out and decide, what do we want to save? So a portion will go into, they each have an account that we put money into monthly. What do we want to spend? And what do we want to, in some way, give to others? And I really loved that, because it's such a simple like split for children, I think. And I do feel as adults, it gives us the 3 things that many of us are looking to do with our money.
Yes.
So just a tidbit that I picked up,
that.
probably on TikTok, that I enjoy. Why do we spend our money to get people to like us? Why do we feel like we need to put a dollar amount on something for someone to feel like we love them? And this episode's coming out on Christmas, so very timely in the holiday discussion.
Americans, we're obsessed with money. I think other countries are, but obviously I know America well, right? So we're obsessed with money, and I think a lot of times we place value on the money. So there is the value of, this person is X because they are financially successful.
Yeah.
And I say that like, oh, they are this type of person because of the money, which does not relate. Like, they're not connected. But we do put emotional value and moral code onto the money aspect. And we all live in a capitalist society. So if it's like, oh, give the gift of insert here, love, time, patience, all of these things. And you're like, oh, well, that means I love them so much. So I want to make sure they know, insert buying whatever gift. And I think there's an aspect of that. And then when we start talking about ourselves, I do really think it comes down to self-esteem. It comes down to how you feel about yourself and how you think other people are going to perceive you if you buy, have, are wearing, insert here. And I think a lot of that, it does come from some of our childhood and how we felt growing up. And I know for me personally, sometimes I'm like, wow, when my mom wouldn't get me those Deb jeans for whatever reason, like she's just like, Asia, this is ridiculous. It could have been because we bought a pair last week. It just, when I felt that, I was like, oh, I'm just not as cool as other people. Like I'm not as cool as the person who has this one or that one or whatever it might be. But self-esteem really impacts how we operate with our money, and we don't really talk about that a lot. And how people at the end of the day, we all just want to feel seen. We want to be seen for who we are, who we feel, and sometimes we know who we are and sometimes we really don't. And you are trying to curate who that person is and signal who that person is by what you drive, what you wear, where you eat, what you do, whatever it might be. And instead of like, no, my friends and my loved ones know that I'm awesome because I'm just awesome.
Right.
Like I don't need to have these other things. So it's wrapped up in that. And it's also wrapped up in what happens when you feel like you're looking for the next thing for yourself. So if it's, hey, I'm going to work out all the time because I have a new Stanley. I have a new workout set. So that means that I'm going to want to go to the gym because I have this workout set. I'm like, girl, no. Like, you're going to want to go to the gym because you either want to go to the gym, you're disciplined to go to the gym, I don't always believe in motivated to go to the gym, all of those things, not because you have the new workout set. That might work once or twice, but
it will work in the beginning, I will say.
Yeah.
Like, I do think it'll work in the beginning, and then I think you lose it.
Right.
Because that workout set is no longer new.
Correct.
I find myself doing these cycles of I get something, and then I wear it. And then I get something new.
Yep.
And then I wear it. And I'm like, why am I so obsessed with the newest item?
And like, how do you feel? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the feeling that's happening when you're in that workout set? And it could be anything, whatever it is. Like, why does it feel different to be in that new than it feels when it becomes old?
Is it true that the rush we receive of, I don't know if it's endorphins or what, is like at its highest right before we buy something?
Yes, the dopamine.
Yeah, so what happens there?
It's anticipation. That's what it is. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, chemical in our brain, if you will. And it's kind of like, ooh, I'm getting something. The hunt, that excitement, that's what it is. That's when it's like surging, like, ooh, I'm so excited. And by the time it gets to you, you might not be nearly as excited as you were when you were kind of like searching it out and thinking about getting it. And that's kind of what hooks you, because then you're like, oh, let's get that again. We want these dopamine hits, and it makes sense as humans, right? Like, this isn't, the way we live now is not where we started, as you can imagine. So if you're thinking about hunting and gathering when we needed to do those things.
Interesting.
That, of course, is going to be like, oh, yeah, I found this. I found food. We're going to be okay. I'm going to eat. I'm excited. And then we go to now, like, we just talked about, we don't even need to pull out cash or a card. You can literally just tap your phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous and amazing. I love Apple Pay, but it's so dangerous. But also, I think it's that hunt is so real when it comes to a sale. Like the hunt of a sale and the save. It's like, do I need this? No. Is it on sale? Yes, I want it.
Yep.
And I would actually love your thoughts on this. I talked about this in terms of the work of creating the journal and how I wanted to strategically release it and how many units I was ordering of it. And there's this mentality right now that's very popular with creator founded products, I guess you could say, where it's this drop mentality.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hype, and you build up the hype, and then you do a limited edition drop.
Yep.
And then that's it.
Yep.
And it's sellout focused. And it's fascinating to me as a creator / producer, because when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, yeah, you're building more attention and hype, and you then typically sell out the product. So you're making that money, and it makes sense. But as a consumer, I'm like catching myself wanting things that I don't want or need, because it's like, but if I don't get it now, I won't be able to get it.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And so I was so intentional when I was releasing the journal because I didn't want people to feel that way. And also I feel that you miss out on opportunities of like, I didn't want it to sell out.
Yeah.
I want everyone who wants it to be able to get it.
Yeah.
But why do we have that mental excitement or need? Is it because we want to fit in? Like,
well, it's also scarcity. Like what you're talking about is the scarcity,
That's true. That's what
right?
it is.
If it is the, there's only but so many, so I have to get mine now or it's not going to be there. And that sucks, right?
Yeah.
And that's also disappointment that you then have to manage. So if it's like, oh my goodness, everybody's getting this, everybody's looking out for this journal, everyone's waiting for it to drop, that adds scarcity, right? It is a marketing technique, but it is also like our psychology. Like we want to be seen. We want to be in the community. We want to be like, oh, did you get it? I did get it. Let's talk about it. We're excited together versus, no, I didn't get it. This sucks. Like I follow also an influencer who drops rings and there are times when I've gotten them. There have been times when I haven't gotten them, but it's like exciting to be a part of the community, waiting for the rings to drop, getting excited. Like I'm full on in it with them. The thrill. And it's really fun searching for it.
Yeah.
And then you get it and you're like, awesome. But I sit and I read the comments when people don't get it too. And they're very upset and very pissed. And does it mean it wasn't successful? No, but it does mean like you literally can't get everybody one all the time.
I know.
Like, just as somebody who's producing something, like you can't always make sure that everyone has one, even though we may want to. So it's just kind of how do we dance between the, you know, you're selling something, the sales point of wanting to do well, but also making sure that, you know, you're not left with a huge inventory of things because
I know
the market's saturated.
But the people pleaser in me is like, but I don't want anyone to want it and not be able to get it. It's fascinating. What do you have in terms of advice for someone who's catching themselves in that chase for the thrill and the hunt that may not actually need that item? Like, is there something that we should be asking ourselves when we're sitting in the consumer seat of trying to get to the bottom of, should I actually be purchasing this? Is this really something I should be doing? Or am I just looking for the thrill?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, like in that moment, like take yourself out of the consumer seat. So if that means put your phone down, shut it off, walk away, go outside, literally touch some grass, like go talk to a friend, laugh, do something else, take a shower, walk, all the coping skills, right? Like I loved when they had the trend of the dopamine menu. I thought that was fantastic because that's what people need to do. So if you are in the midst of, hey, I can't stop the chase right now, like we gotta like pull you out. And then you can think about, do I really need that? Did I really want that? What was going on? Was I just upset? Was I feeling bad about myself that day? What was happening that I could not stop obsessing about this one thing? And then you can decide, oh, I just really wanted it, or I really love them and I want to support them and that feels really cool to me. Okay, now we can go back and be intentional instead of this like mindless wanting that you're in the cycle of, but you have to kind of pull yourself out to say, okay, can I afford it? Do I have 17 others of this exact thing?
Do I need it?
Right. Do I need it? And then you can say, no, I don't need it, but I want it because XYZ.
It's interesting in terms of this conversation with shopping and stuff. Like something that has helped me tremendously is I have a note on my phone. Whenever I feel, oh, I kind of want that, I'll put it in the note. And then if that thought comes up many of times, like there's this bag right there that I have and I love, and I get dressed, and many times I catch myself thinking, I wish I had this bag in black. I wish I had this exact bag because I love it in black. And that has been in my notes. Like I'm tallying how many times I'm going back to it. Or I wish I had a like gray or some color trench coat, not black, you know, and like how many times am I actually wanting that? And then there's no set number that I have it hit, but once I notice time and time again, I'm wishing I could grab the same thing, then maybe it's worth investing in said piece. And that has helped me tremendously shop more intentionally rather than just like, oop, click. Because Apple Pay, even on your phone, makes it easier. I mean, it's so like easy. When you're shopping, if I have to fill out my address, my credit card, I'm way less likely to purchase something because I don't know my credit card off the top of my head. So I'm like, oh, I have to go find my wallet. I don't need it. But if I can just doop.
Right. But those are the barriers that are important that help us to kind of slow down the mindlessness of it, right? So if you do have to get up to get your card or type in your address, like those are important barriers that we need to slow us down to be like, what am I doing right now?
Right.
Versus the, I want it, I need it, dot, dot, dot. And I'm guilty of it too. There are many times when I'm like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. I just bought something off TikTok Shop. It's a gift for my husband, but I was like, what? I was in it too deep.
I just did my second purchase off of TikTok Shop as well.
Yeah.
But I actually have used it already. It's like a really cool tripod situation.
Yeah.
It's honestly awesome for work. How do we set boundaries around people, or how do we set boundaries around money with our relationships with people? So say there's someone listening who is in the age of bachelorettes and weddings.
Oh, yes.
How do we say...
Godspeed.
Yeah, yes. I'm in the midst of planning Lucy's bachelorette. And even I'm having, the number one thing, I'm speaking with a few travel agents, is like, what's the budget? I'm like, I don't know. Like that whole conversation is difficult to navigate, especially when there's so many other people's financial situations involved. Like, how do we say no to things?
Yeah. Well, first I'm going to say ask everybody.
Yeah.
Ask the people. I do that with my girls. Whenever we go on a trip, I wish more people were doing it before. When I was in my bachelorette season, I wish we were asking and talking about it more.
Yeah.
And just ask people like, hey, what's your high, medium, low?
But like, for instance, I said in my text, like, hey, if anyone has a specific number they need to stay below, or if anyone, needs, I'm happy to subsidize. If you really want to come and money is the barrier, talk to me.
Okay.
But I also think that people are reluctant to admit and raise their hand.
I agree, but that's not for you. That's for them, right? And then me and them, can go have a separate conversation of like, hey, why does it feel too vulnerable to be honest about like where you're at? Like, I understand you don't want a handout. We hate the idea of a handout, but you want to go and you might need one.
Yeah.
That's okay. And they're willing to help you and they want to because they care about you and they want you to be there and have a good time too. So we have to kind of separate those two things, again, back to the like moral failing because you can't afford something. So people, speak up. Like if somebody's willing to help, like take the help. It does not mean that you're not on top of it. You can feel bad, but come feel bad in my office and I'll support you through that. But so I think it's just hard to admit because of, what we've decided it means if you don't. And then what was your question again, the first one?
How do we say no to things?
And then saying no to things is really, it's hard. I understand it's hard. And we can treat no as a complete sentence, but I always like to add a little fluff on it for people because sometimes it's just easily digestible, not only for the other person, but for you to say the no. So, hey, I would really love to go, but that's just outside of my budget right now. And again, we're being honest about the budget. We're being honest that like, hey, I might not be able to afford it because I'm trying to like really debunk this vulnerability. We all have to navigate money, so let's just let it be in the room versus like walking around this huge elephant.
Right.
So I'm really, I had a few other trips planned this year. I would really love to go, but I would love to do something smaller with Lucy, insert other name here, bride's name for birthday, whatever. Can we do that? Like, what do you think about that? Or I can't go. If you have to make up an excuse, make up an excuse. If it feels better to say like, hey, I can't go because of work, then say you can't go because of work. But I just don't want people feeling like crap because they can't afford to go. Yeah. And I think that's what happens, and that breeds the shame further. And that like circles us back to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is why do people feel ashamed? And it's because you feel like you should be able to go. Yeah. I should be able to afford this. Why can't I? Why can they? And we have no idea why other people can afford the things that they can afford.
Right. You're never getting a full picture of anything.
Correct. And we like to
especially
assume,
on social media.
Oh my goodness. Yes, exactly. We like to assume that this person is in this situation because they're doing that. And we have no idea. No idea. And it's okay. But a lot of times we just make the comparison to what that other person is doing when we have no idea what the full picture is.
As someone who has had people say no, and as someone who has said no for different reasons, I feel that you're doing such a better service by saying no than reluctantly going to something.
Yeah.
Whether it's you don't want to be there and you're going because you feel like you have to, but then you're kind of wishing you weren't there the whole time. Yeah. Like people pick up on that energy.
Yeah.
Or if you're someone who can't swing it, but you force yourself to try and then you're there, and you can pick up on the energy of someone who's really stressed about the amount of money that's being spent, whether it's a dinner bill that's coming, I think saying no and taking yourself out of that situation is actually doing a positive service to the other person.
Healthy boundary. It's just like the healthy boundary so that you don't feel bad either.
Right.
And you're not mad at the person because you feel like they made you spend
Exactly.
this
Then there's
money.
the resentment. Yeah.
Correct.
We close with the segment of filling your cup. How do you fill your cup as a mom, business owner, all of the things? Like, what do you do?
I am such an extrovert. So filling my cup really does look like spending time with other people. I went to a party this weekend and got to see people that I don't usually get to have adult, uninterrupted conversation with. So lovely. Like that, I left feeling like I was on a high because I just spent time with other adults having good conversations. So seeing other people and friends who are going through similar things as I am is really helpful for me. And then I would say with, being a working mom and an entrepreneur, filling my cup with having that same conversation with other people who are in the same boat is very helpful to me, to be like, Asia, it is not just you. You are not the only one who's like trying to figure this out. There's no, again, failing because you haven't figured quite it out. You cannot routine yourself out of like feeling like you don't have enough time. So it's just helpful, again, to feel seen and like I'm not the only one going through it. So
absolutely,
spending time with people is really fills my cup every time.
It's a great way to spend your time. How can people best support you? Where can they find you if they want more of you?
Yeah, so my book is out, Feel Good Finance.
It'll be linked.
Yep, thank you. You can get that wherever you get your books. I'm also on IG at Asia E Therapy and at my website, AsiaEvansCounseling.com. Yeah.
Amazing. Everything will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.